askreddit. People who have survived a murder attempt, by dumb luck, what's your story? askreddit. Was a bouncer at a club in LA for a minute in the 90s. Stopped some dudes clearly affiliated, in a gang, at the door after they refused security checks. After a few minutes of their threats and Manson lamps, they left spewing all sort of warnings. A little later it starts to wind down, and because it's a little slow and we're overstaffed, so I start to drink. I get a bit drunk, not wasted, but sleepy buzzed, so I tell my buddy I'm going to go lay down in the back of his car for a while. A few minutes after lying down I realize I have to piss. I get out and stumble a few into a spot between a guard gate, for a parking lot, and a building for a little privacy. There's a few dozen people milling around in front of the club. I'm about 25 feet away from the club's entrance and just off an alleyway. While I'm relieving myself, a dude runs right past in front of me, around the guard booth to my rear, and unloads a 9mm, recovered rounds from back seat, trunk, roof, bumper, into the back seat of the car. Bam 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 bam, bam 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 bam. He then turns, runs right back past me, and down the alley into the night. Don't think he saw me at all. Nothing really came of it. Except my partner was convinced I was a marked man and refused to be near me for a year or so. Edit. Holy crap. I kind of expected this to get buried. This was Los Angeles. I was about 25, almost 50 now. So some specifics are long gone, but I remember this. My buddy was genuinely terrified by this. I don't think he knew anything about it. In fact, he seemed to interpret the event as a large conspiracy to have me snuffed, not some random pissed off dude making a point, getting jumped in, and because he ditched the car / wouldn't take my calls, it got left at that. For those concerned with the car, it was, like, a 1980s rusted out sedan ... maybe a $500 car. Details about the slugs, number of rounds fired were relayed to me later by third parties. My friend and I were known in the neighborhood, people were talking about it. Thank you for the well wishes. Honestly though, this wasn't even the first time I was shot at. It's been a long strange trip. Edit 2. Also, I tried to argue later that it's just as likely the guy was shooting at someone else across the street and that the car just got in the way. But there were holes all through that thing. Backseat at 4-5. Another 2/3 went into the back window and ended up in the backs of the front seats. Another 2/3 rounds went right into the trunk. I honestly don't know if he was a terrible shot, or if he hit right what he was aiming for. Apologies if I'm doing this wrong. My friend got killed because of someone like that. He was a photographer working a house show party. Two guys either got kicked out or weren't allowed in. The two guys proceed to do a drive-by shooting later that night, and John just happened to get hit and killed by their random shooting. FK those assholes. He was a good dude. askreddit. My dad was a meth addict. He did lots of fucked up things, dropping me off at trap houses to have sleepovers with other coke babies, living in a house full of animal shit and hoarding. He sicked his pit bull on a black child. He was a real fucking character. One night he came looking for my mum and I at our place. Mom wasn't there. Grandma was babysitting me. I was sleeping in bed when somebody started to try and open my window. It was locked, but they kept jamming something into the bottom to try and force it open. At the same time, I heard the living room door being tried by somebody else. My grandma snuck into my room in her nightgown, apparently woken up by the same thing, and told me say nothing. Don't even whisper. We laid under my bed while a group of men shouted for my mum to come out, slammed their hands on the windows to try and break them, and jumped on my grandma's car. She called the police and barely whispered into the phone. Eventually the cops arrived and the men scattered. Long story short, my dad and his other meth head friends came to the house with guns and knives with every intention to kill me and my mother because she was going to get custody of me. If my mom wasn't so vigilant with locks, we had 3 different kinds on the front and back doors, we would have died. Pro tip: locks are only as good as the striker plate that supports them. To ensure no one can kick down your door easily, install elongated screws in the striker plate. Super cheap way to reinforce the door without buying special hard-to-get hardware. To see a video illustration of it, view here. Edit: oh, gold and silver? I didn't expect that. Thank you, kind strangers. I hope my comment isn't ever truly needed for any of you, but adds peace of mind either way. Edit 2.0, so many have given positive feedback that it made me do extra digging. The original video that made me aware of this tip is here. askreddit. I was 14 and outside in my garage petting my cat. It was November, so it was already dark by 5 p.m. Someone opened the door behind me without me hearing, grabbed me by my ponytail and starting dragging me outside. They hit me on my head with a brick and knocked me out. Pulled me halfway around my house when, I'm guessing this is when, they stabbed me on the left side of my stomach. This must have brought me out of my daze, because my mum said she heard me scream from inside where she and my brother and sister were in the kitchen. They came out the front door and saw me bleeding out on the sidewalk, called 911. Had 12 stitches, double layer, a severe concussion, and whiplash. Didn't eat and hardly slept for a week. They never found them. Edit: somehow believed for nearly 14 years I was 15 when this happened. Turns out I was 14. Edited to correct. Second edit: thank you so much for my first gold. That's why I like having a dog. Makes it a lot harder for someone to sneak up on my house. askreddit. My sister had this one friend when we were growing up I always got a bad vibe from. She would try to pick on my little brother but I would always stop her. I was 8, she was 10. Once we were at a lake and all the kids were swimming. I swam out to the deep roped off part but I was still little and really shouldn't have. She kept acting weird and getting closer to me, making this weird laugh. She pushed me off the wooden pole in the water and I got scared and started to swim back, but she came up behind me and pushed me under the water. It didn't click at first that she was trying to drown me, but after she aggressively pushed me under the 3rd time I had this crazy moment of clarity. It was like the world slowed down ever so briefly. I relaxed and let myself sink, swam underneath her, and came up behind her. I grabbed her hair and shoved her face into the water, keeping my legs on her back so her body couldn't rise. I waited until her struggling slowed down and let her come up. I waited in the water saying nothing, bracing myself for her retaliation, but she just looked panicked and swam back to shore. I told my sister, who had already expressed that the girl was weird. We confronted her together and she just looked really dazed. In a monotone voice she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know it would be like that." It wasn't until I replayed those words in my mind later that I realized what she was saying was, "Sorry, I tried to drown you." It wasn't until I was almost drowned myself that I realized how horrible it is to do to someone. You might have taught her empathy that day with your self-defense tactic. You might have saved someone's future life and kept her out of prison. Thank you for the silver. Thank you. I definitely hoped so. After I wrote this, I reached out to my sister to see if she remembered the girl's last name. I looked her up and she doesn't have a lot in the way of social media, so it's hard to tell what's going on in her life. She's 28 now, but it'll be interesting to keep up with what happens to her. askreddit. Serious. 3 men drugged me and kidnapped me. I woke up on the floor with one of them tearing my clothes off and my moon boot, broken foot. I tried kicking him off with the boot but he started knocking my head into the floor and I passed out. I woke up in daylight in a garbage bin, naked and in a pool of my own blood. I don't know how the fuck I got out of there or how I found the nearest policeman, but I then collapsed again. Woke up in a hospital with 52 stitches in my head and 78 in and around my vulva and breasts. Doctor said it was the worst rape trauma she ever saw. They say it's a miracle I'm alive and don't know how I did it. They were never caught. I am a crisis, trauma and PTSD counselor now. They didn't win. Edit, SHT. I never thought I'd get a response like this. I woke up and thought my Reddit notifications was on crack. Geez guys, thank you so fucking much for the compliments and support. It's a bit overwhelming TBH and I don't know what to say except thank you. You guys are amazing. Also, thanks for all the bling. That really wasn't necessary but so cool, thanks. To clear up, I am a woman and I am married and I posted in our Animals Binged Ups a pic of my husband and doggo speak is encouraged, so the dad was referring to my husband. Lastly, to the people who say I'm lying or looking for attention, suck my metaphorical balls. Edit 2. Thank you once again. Hope you guys don't mind but I printed the thread with all the amazing messages and I've added to my notice board. askreddit. I was exiting a bar once after last call and was with a friend who was a medic. We saw a girl laying in a snowbank near a telephone pole who had just been hit by a car. We ran over and tried to help her. Some others were already on the phone with 911 and I, not having any medical training, didn't have anything to contribute but didn't want to just leave. The whole situation was concerning. I turn around for a second and start to hear people screaming. I turn around, a minivan was heading for us, the few people around this woman. They already started to run, but I was too late. He hit me as I was trying to flee. Put the car in reverse, ran over me again, and then went forward and ran over me a third time. Turns out the guy was high and drunk and got into a fight with the women's BF, whom I bared a strong resemblance to. He thought I was him. Not to throw a pity party for myself, but 9 years later I have a ton of medical issues, and my life pretty much started on a downward spiral since then. But sure, I guess I survived. Edit. For everyone wondering about the guy, an off-duty cop watched the whole thing go down, and copied his license plate number. He was apprehended 20 minutes later and charged with attempted murder, along with many other things. He pleaded out to just 3 years in jail. He had actually killed someone else a few years before drunk driving. How they thought that was appropriate is beyond me.